In the annals of true crime, few names resonate with the chilling dread quite like Edmund Emil Kemper III.
Standing at an imposing 6 feet 9 inches, Kemper projected an image that could be disarmingly calm, even intelligent. Yet beneath this facade lay a labyrinthine mind, twisted by years of abuse, neglect, and burgeoning psychopathy. His crimes, committed primarily in the early 1970s, targeted young women and, ultimately, those closest to him, leaving an indelible scar on the quiet community of Santa Cruz, California, and baffling investigators with their sheer depravity and cold calculation. Born in Burbank, California, in 1948, Kemper's early life was a crucible of conflict and instability. His parents' marriage was volatile, marked by intense arguments and eventual separation. His mother, Clarnell Kemper, was described as domineering and emotionally abusive, frequently belittling Edmund and imposing harsh, arbitrary rules. His father, Edmund Kemper Jr., a military man, was largely absent, leaving young Edmund caught in the crossfire of his parents' bitter divorce and his mother's increasing hostility.
This fractured home environment laid a deeply unstable foundation for his psychological development.
As a child, Kemper exhibited disturbing behaviors that hinted at the violence to come.
He would torture and kill small animals, a classic warning sign often associated with antisocial tendencies.
Accounts from family members describe him decapitating dolls and fantasizing about violence against his mother. These acts, dismissed or inadequately addressed by his overwhelmed and often absent parents, were not mere childish mischief. They were early manifestations of a deeply troubled psyche, escalating in intensity and frequency, signaling a growing fascination with control, power, and morbid acts, far beyond typical boyhood curiosity. The relationship between Edmund and his mother, Clarnell, was acutely pathological. Clarnell often confined Edmund to the basement, even forcing him to sleep there, describing him as too big for the house. She frequently ridiculed his intelligence and made him feel worthless. This constant humiliation, coupled with emotional neglect, fostered deep resentment and a simmering rage within young Kemper. Psychologists would later identify this dynamic as a key factor in his development, creating a desperate need for control and validation that would manifest in horrific ways as he grew older and his inner turmoil deepened into overt aggression.
At the age of 15, Kemper's disturbing fantasies tragically spilled into reality.
In August 1964, while living with his paternal grandparents in North Fork, California, he shot and killed his grandmother, Maud Kemper, with a .22 caliber rifle. When his grandfather, Edmund Kemper Sr., returned home, Kemper shot and killed him as well. His chilling confession to authorities following the murders was calm and collected, showing little remorse. He then contacted his mother to inform her of his actions. This double homicide marked the beginning of his violent trajectory, a stark warning sign missed by the system. Following the murders of his grandparents, Kemper was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and committed to the Atascadero State Hospital, a facility for the criminally insane. During his time there, he participated in various therapy programs and was evaluated by multiple psychiatrists. He displayed an astonishing ability to manipulate his evaluators, feigning progress and understanding of his condition. His intellectual capacity, combined with his pathological cunning, allowed him to convince professionals that he was rehabilitated, posing a significant challenge to diagnosis and treatment within the existing psychiatric framework of the era. After 5 years, at the age of 21, Kemper was deemed rehabilitated and released in 1969, against the initial recommendations of some of his therapists. His release was predicated on the belief that he no longer posed a threat to society, a tragic misjudgment with devastating consequences. He returned to live with his mother in Santa Cruz, a move that would prove fatal for several innocent individuals. The very environment that had nurtured his psychopathy now served as the backdrop for his escalating crimes, with a seemingly reformed Kemper re-entering the world largely unsupervised and his underlying pathologies unchecked. Upon his release, Kemper found employment with the California Division of Highways, where he drove a dump truck. Ironically, his work often put him in contact with law enforcement officers, who knew him simply as Big Ed. He frequented local bars popular with police and even aspired to join the force himself, often discussing his problems with officers, who saw him as a troubled but essentially harmless giant. This proximity to authority figures provided him with a perverse sense of security and knowledge, allowing him to operate under the radar while simultaneously observing police procedures and blind spots, further honing his deceptive abilities. During this period, Kemper's dark fantasies, previously confined to animal cruelty and violent thoughts, intensified dramatically. He became obsessed with control and necrophilia, meticulously planning and rehearsing his crimes in his mind. The societal pressures and his unresolved anger towards his mother festered, turning inward into elaborate, violent scenarios. He would often drive around Santa Cruz, picking up hitchhikers, a habit that allowed him to scout potential victims and refine his methods of deception and coercion. These reconnaissance missions were a crucial step in his escalating pathology, bridging the gap between violent thought and horrific action. Between May 1972 and February 1973, Edmund Kemper unleashed a reign of terror on Santa Cruz, targeting female college students, earning him the moniker the Co-ed Killer. His first victims were Marion Pesci and Anita Lucchesa, both 18, whom he picked up while they were hitchhiking. He drove them to a secluded area, murdered them, and then transported their bodies to his apartment. His careful planning and ability to evade detection in these initial stages instilled a false confidence, emboldening him to continue his heinous acts and escalate their depravity in the quiet, unsuspecting coastal community.
Kemper's modus operandi became chillingly consistent.
He would pick up hitchhiking students, gain their trust, and then abduct them.
His victims were typically young, bright, and unsuspecting women.
After murdering them, he would transport their bodies back to his apartment, where he engaged in necrophilic acts, dismemberment, and cannibalism. He meticulously cleaned up after each crime, leaving little to no forensic evidence at the primary scenes. This methodical approach, coupled with his intimate knowledge of police procedures, allowed him to elude capture for months, causing widespread fear and panic throughout the Santa Cruz area.
The murders continued with increasing frequency and brutality.
In January 1973, Kemper abducted and murdered Ikoku, 15. The following month, he killed Cindy Schall, 18, and Rosalind Thorpe, 23. His methods became more audacious, his acts more gruesome, yet he remained undetected. The contrast between his outwardly calm demeanor and the horrific nature of his inner world grew starker. Each successful abduction and murder further reinforced his sense of power and invulnerability, deepening his delusion that he could continue indefinitely, unchallenged by law enforcement or society's moral fabric. Remarkably, despite Kemper's frequent interactions with law enforcement and his imposing size, he never fell under serious suspicion. He was articulate, polite, and cooperative, even offering to help police with their investigation into the very murders he was committing.
His ability to charm and disarm allowed him to deflect any doubts.
The prevailing stereotype of a serial killer did not match Big Ed, a polite, intelligent giant who worked for the state. This blind spot within the investigative process, coupled with Kemper's cunning, allowed him to continue his deadly spree for months, perpetuating a terrifying misconception of the killer's profile. Throughout his adult life and during his killing spree, Kemper continued to live with his mother, Clarnell.
Their relationship remained fraught with tension and animosity.
Clarnell frequently brought home male friends, making Kemper feel like an outsider in his own home. She continued her verbal abuse, often comparing him unfavorably to other men and emasculating him. This toxic cohabitation was a constant source of stress for Kemper, fueling his underlying rage and contributing to his psychological breakdown. The intimate proximity of his most significant tormentor while he simultaneously committed his atrocities reveals a horrifying duality. The culmination of Kemper's simmering rage against his mother finally erupted. On April 20, 1973, he murdered Clarnell in her sleep with a hammer, before sexually desecrating her body. The act was a deeply symbolic and perverse culmination of decades of abuse and resentment. It was not merely murder, but a final, grotesque act of rebellion and assertion of control against the woman who had tormented him his entire life. The violence was extreme, deeply personal, and marked the apex of his escalating pathology, pushing him beyond even the boundaries he had established with his previous victims. Following his mother's murder, Kemper also killed her best friend, Sally Hallett, who had come over for a visit. He murdered Hallett to prevent her from discovering Clarnell's body and potentially identifying him. This act, while perhaps opportunistic, demonstrates Kemper's cold rationality and his capacity for immediate, calculated violence to cover his tracks. The murder of Sally Hallett underscores his complete detachment from human life and his singular focus on avoiding capture, further illustrating the depths of his depravity and the immediate danger he posed to anyone who might cross his path. After the murders of his mother and Sally Hallett, Kemper fled Santa Cruz, driving cross-country to Colorado. Once there, in a surprising turn of events, he called the Santa Cruz Police Department from a payphone in Pueblo, Colorado, and calmly confessed to all his crimes. He detailed each murder, the dismemberments, and necrophilic acts with startling precision and lack of emotion. His confession was so thorough and credible that officers initially struggled to believe it was genuine. This act of surrender was unprecedented, confounding seasoned investigators and marking the abrupt end to his reign of terror. Police in Pueblo, Colorado, were initially skeptical of the anonymous caller claiming to be the co-ed killer. However, after verifying details that only the perpetrator could know, they located and arrested Kemper. He offered no resistance. He was then extradited back to California, where he would face justice for his horrific crimes. The arrest brought a wave of relief, but also profound shock, as the quiet giant known to local police as Big Ed was revealed to be the monster responsible for the string of brutal murders that had terrorized the community for months. During interrogations, Kemper's composure was chilling. He spoke openly and dispassionately about his crimes, providing graphic details without any visible remorse or emotion. His intelligence and verbal acuity were evident, as he articulated his motives and methods with disturbing clarity. He seemed to relish the opportunity to share his story, offering insights into his twisted psyche that fascinated and horrified seasoned detectives and forensic psychiatrists alike. These interviews provided an unprecedented window into the mind of a serial killer, revealing a complex mix of intelligence, narcissism, and profound psychopathy. Kemper's confessions revealed a deeply disturbed set of motives, rooted in his traumatic childhood and pathological relationship with his mother. He described his acts as a desperate attempt to gain control, to enact revenge for perceived humiliations, and to fulfill morbid fantasies. The necrophilic aspects of his crimes were tied to his inability to form normal relationships and his desire for complete power over his victims. His intellect allowed him to articulate these motivations with an unsettling self-awareness, yet he remained utterly devoid of empathy, showcasing a profound disconnect from human morality and suffering. The trial of Edmund Kemper commenced in 1973. His defense team attempted to argue for a plea of insanity, citing his history of mental illness and the grotesque nature of his crimes. However, Kemper himself, with his startling lucidity and detailed accounts of his actions, actively undermined this defense. He insisted on testifying, often providing additional, horrifying details. His legal battle was less about denying culpability and more about understanding the complex interplay between his diagnosed mental health issues and his undeniable capacity for cold, calculated evil, blurring the lines of legal responsibility. During his trial, Kemper made a shocking request. He asked for the death penalty. He stated he deserved it for his crimes, and he openly expressed his fear of being released from prison again, acknowledging the danger he still posed to society. This self-awareness, though chilling, highlighted the depth of his psychological conflict. He recognized his own monstrous nature and seemed to prefer the finality of execution over the risk of future harm, offering a rare glimpse into a serial killer's internal struggle with their own impulses and the consequences of their actions. Despite his legal team's efforts, the jury ultimately rejected the insanity defense. Edmund Kemper was found guilty of 8 counts of first-degree murder. Given that the death penalty had been suspended in California at the time of his conviction, he was sentenced to 7 terms of life imprisonment. The verdict brought a semblance of closure to the victims' families and the terrorized community of Santa Cruz, ensuring that Big Ed would remain behind bars, stripped of his ability to inflict further harm, a permanent reminder of the fragile line between humanity and monstrousness.
Since his conviction, Edmund Kemper has been incarcerated at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Behind bars, he has been a subject of numerous interviews, including those by FBI profilers John E. Douglas and Robert Ressler, contributing significantly to the understanding of serial killer psychology. He has maintained a surprisingly articulate and cooperative demeanor, continuing to provide chilling insights into his mind. He's also been involved in various prison programs, including recording audiobooks for the blind, an ironic twist for a man who brought such darkness into the lives of others. Kemper's candidness during interviews has made him a valuable, albeit disturbing, resource for criminal psychology. His detailed self-analysis, his ability to articulate his thought processes, and his apparent lack of remorse offer profound, unsettling insights into the psychopathic mind. Experts have noted his high IQ and his skill at manipulating others, which were evident from his childhood. He represents a complex case study, demonstrating how intellect can serve depravity, and how a seemingly normal exterior can mask an abyss of internal violence, challenging conventional notions of sanity and evil. The Kemper case profoundly highlights the devastating impact of early childhood trauma and abuse on psychological development. While such experiences do not universally lead to violent crime, in Kemper's specific context, the constant emotional battering and neglect he endured created a fertile ground for his inherent predispositions towards violence and psychopathy to flourish. His story serves as a stark reminder of the long-term consequences of an unstable home environment and the critical need for early intervention and robust mental health support systems, especially for children exhibiting early warning signs of severe behavioral issues. One of the most unsettling aspects of Kemper's case is his intelligence. With an estimated IQ of 145, he was far from the uneducated, brutish killer stereotype. This intellectual capacity allowed him to meticulously plan his crimes, evade detection, and even manipulate mental health professionals during his institutionalization. It also enabled him to articulate his twisted logic with a frightening clarity during interviews, making him a complex and terrifying figure. His intellect was not a tool for good but was weaponized by his psychopathy, making him an even more formidable and dangerous predator. Kemper's ability to cultivate the Big Ed persona, a friendly, helpful, albeit large man, was central to his success in eluding capture. He deliberately engaged with law enforcement, volunteered to assist in searches for his victims, and presented himself as a normal, contributing member of society. This elaborate deception capitalized on societal biases and expectations, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of human perception and psychology. The Big Ed facade was his most effective weapon, allowing him to blend in plain sight while committing unspeakable atrocities, reinforcing the dangers of underestimating a predator's cunning. The Edmund Kemper case had a significant impact on law enforcement and criminal profiling. It shattered preconceived notions about serial killers, demonstrating that they could be articulate, intelligent, and even cooperative with authorities. His case helped emphasize the importance of psychological profiling and understanding the complex motivations behind such crimes, moving beyond simplistic explanations. It also highlighted the need for more thorough mental health evaluations in the justice system, particularly concerning the release of individuals with a history of violent offenses, prompting a re-evaluation of risk assessment protocols. The effects of Kemper's crimes on the Santa Cruz community were profound and lasting. A once peaceful college town was gripped by fear and suspicion. The disappearance of young women created a climate of paranoia, eroding trust and changing social behaviors. Hitchhiking, once a common practice, became synonymous with extreme danger. Even after Kemper's capture, the trauma lingered, a stark reminder of the vulnerability of seemingly safe environments to the hidden darkness within individuals. The community rallied, but the scars of those years remain etched into its collective memory, a cautionary tale. Today, Edmund Kemper remains incarcerated, a fixture within the California prison system. He has been eligible for parole numerous times, but each request has been denied. His continued articulate discussions of his past crimes, coupled with his persistent lack of genuine remorse, consistently lead to parole board rejections. His fate is to spend the rest of his life behind bars, a living testament to the irreversible damage he inflicted. His case serves as a constant point of reference in discussions about criminal justice, mental health, and the nature of enduring evil. The Edmund Kemper case compels us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of evil. Was he born evil, or was he made so by his environment? The interplay of genetic predisposition, severe childhood trauma, and a deeply fractured psyche created a perfect storm of pathology. His story reminds us that monsters are not always easily identifiable, they can hide in plain sight, charismatic and intelligent, making them all the more terrifying. It challenges our understanding of human capacity for cruelty and forces a deeper examination of the societal factors that may contribute to such horrific outcomes, pushing boundaries of comprehension. The legacy of Edmund Kemper extends beyond the horror of his crimes. His case has profoundly influenced forensic psychology, criminal profiling, and the study of psychopathy. It underscored the limitations of existing mental health diagnostic tools in the 1960s and 70s and led to improvements in understanding high-functioning psychopaths. The emphasis on detailed behavioral analysis, the importance of listening to all warning signs, and the critical need for interagency cooperation became paramount. His life is a dark lesson in the importance of recognizing the signs of profound disturbance, even in those who appear outwardly normal and cooperative. Beyond the academic insights, the Edmund Kemper case is a stark reminder of the immeasurable human cost of serial violence. 8 lives were brutally extinguished, and countless more were shattered by grief, fear, and trauma. The families of Marion Pesci, Anita Luchessa, Ikoku, Cindy Shaw, Rosalind Thorpe, Alice Liu, Clarnell Kemper, and Sally Hallett carry scars that time cannot fully erase. Their stories are a poignant testament to the innocence lost and the enduring pain inflicted by one man's descent into depravity, a permanent wound on the fabric of their lives. Edmund Kemper's name continues to evoke a profound sense of unease, a legacy cemented by his calm demeanor, his terrifying intelligence, and the sheer brutality of his crimes. He remains one of the most studied and referenced serial killers, a chilling archetype of the highly intelligent, manipulative psychopath. His story serves as a constant warning, a grim reminder that darkness can exist in the most unexpected forms, capable of unimaginable cruelty, leaving behind a wake of devastation that reshapes communities and forever alters the perception of safety and human nature.